Let's talk about no low back pain. Now, when you're talking about the low back pain, everybody thinks the pain's coming from their back. I agree. You're feeling pain in the back. I completely accept that you're feeling that. But it doesn't come from the back. It's coming from your lateral hamstring on the outside of your leg. Let me explain why. What happens is that when your lateral hamstring is flexible enough, when a muscle is flexible enough, it can then shorten more. So some muscles in your body need to be longer in a normal standing posture, and others need to be shorter. And a lot of people, their pelvis is really rotated down and forward. That means the hamstrings are too long and the muscles on the front and side are too short. And then most people would think these short muscles are pulling the pelvis into a flex position. But instead it's really because the hamstrings are not long enough, because if they were, they would shorten and they would pull the bottom of the pelvis down, and then the pelvis would extend and rotate backwards, and then you wouldn't have such a curve or compression in your lower back. So when you're talking about low back pain, we're talking about you're normally, for whatever reasons, are carrying too much dense fascia and scar tissue in your lateral hamstring. And you can go on the Genius of Flexibility webpage and it will show you very simple stretches of how to stretch out your lateral hamstring. There's a lot of different versions to do that. And when you do that, what ends up happening is that it's going to take your lower back, which is normally compressed and arched forward and pushing your ribs forward, and it's going to pull the bottom of your pelvis down. And when it does that, the curve in your back will decrease and your ribs will come into your body, and it starts to push up your spine to go forward and up. So low back pain is one of the biggest medical problems in the Western Hemisphere. And everybody's thinking, oh, a person has weak abdominals. I'm assuming people don't necessarily have strong abdominals, but your abdominals can't compete with the fascia and scar tissue in your hamstrings. So if you stretch out your lateral hamstring, and say your liver on the inside of the legs, these adductors, and also the other hamstrings on the back, then those muscles are going to contract and they're going to pull your pelvis into extension, and they're going to suspend. They're going to cause suspension in your lower back. And then the tissue in your lower back can start healing. You know, muscle tissue heals, and tendons heal, and ligaments heal, and intervertebral discs heal, and these are more regenerative type of tissue in your body. So it doesn't matter if you had back pain for 30 years. If you change your hamstring, you can start to reverse that and have a very young body, probably a better body than you had as a very young teenager. The lateral hamstring is also, that's so associated in particular with low back pain, a vertical pain in the back, is also associated with your bladder in traditional Chinese medicine. And the bladder is also associated with the prostate in the male. And what happens is in a male after 40, if this muscle group gets too short, it can cause problems in their bladder, frequent urinization, and or problems in their prostate. So if you have either of those things that are associated with your low back pain, it's telling you, boy, you've got to really do something about this. It's not just a physical problem now, it's gone into a physiological problem. I don't think you want that. Also, the lateral hamstrings are associated with money and promotion in business. So if you get particularly distressed in your life in terms of business or money, that muscle group will start to create too much dense fascia and scar tissue. So if you're in a situation where there's financial distress or money issues, then go stretch out that muscle group, and it will connect you to the part of the personality type that knows how to generate money and knows how to be promotional. That's important. Also, the lateral hamstring, again, that's so associated with suspension in your lower back, is also associated with being very hopeful. So if you find yourself not being hopeful, it's probably because of this muscle. And so what you want to do is, instead of giving yourself a hard time about being hopeful or trying to make yourself hopeful, you just stretch that muscle group, and its contiguous muscle groups goes into the calves, into the foot, up your glute, up your back, over the top of your head. And when you stretch those muscle groups, what ends up happening, you become more promotional, more honest, more hopeful. And you start balancing yourself by being a little more self-centered instead of being so other-centered. Psychological change happen. It's an emotional type, this muscle group. So it's important to know that this muscle being flexible has a lot to do with how you're being socially and engaging with people socially. So that's how you get rid of your low back pain. The way you want to do that is go on the webpage, thegeniusofflexibility.com, look up the bladder stretch that will help your lower back and give you suspension there. And start doing those stretches. Give yourself a little time now. If you've had back pain for a long period of time, you probably want to be very careful, of course, when you're doing those. And you want to give yourself a couple weeks of doing it 10 or 15 or 20 minutes a day, and keep feeling the muscle when you stretch it so you can feel how that tissue is getting more pliable and gushy like your bicep and not hard and full of scar tissue the way it probably is if you have a problem in your lower back. And then that will probably tell you if you're going to stretch this, you have to stretch the balancing muscle group on the other side. And if you stretch this, you're probably going to have to stretch the medial hamstring. All that's on the webpage teaching you how to interface with it sequentially in order to get rid of that problem. I'm 71, don't have back pain. So I highly recommend that you don't have it either. We're the same species. If I don't have it, you don't have to have it. And I was hit by a car at 70 miles an hour. So I think you don't have to have that. We're talking about a problem that's showing up somewhere, that's coming from somewhere else you would have never imagined. Try it and find out if it's true. Prove it to yourself. You're the authority on your own body. Have a great time.